Learn how to recognize toxic traits with these 5 Stoic strategies for handling evil personalities. The war within the Stoic art of disarming manipulation. Imagine this: you're sitting across from someone who seems charming, confident, and incredibly persuasive, but as they speak, you notice a subtle tension brewing within you. Their words are laced with flattery, but their actions suggest a different agenda. You leave the conversation drained, questioning yourself, wondering why something feels so off. Sound familiar? We've all encountered individuals who masterfully manipulate, belittle, or drain us without us fully realizing it at first. But how do we protect ourselves without becoming bitter or paranoid? What if I told you that the wisdom of ancient Stoicism holds the key to identifying and neutralizing these toxic traits, all while maintaining your inner peace? Before we dive in, let's ask ourselves this: how often do we allow external chaos to dictate our internal peace? Because here's the truth: the most insidious form of manipulation often isn't what happens to us. It's how we allow it to warp our perception of ourselves. Let's set the stage. In the first minute, we need to understand what Stoicism is at its core. Contrary to popular belief, it's not about suppressing emotions or enduring life's hardships in silence. Instead, Stoicism is the art of mastering your mind, distinguishing what is within your control from what isn't, and approaching every interaction, yes, even with toxic people, from a place of strength and clarity. Now, let's tackle the first Stoic strategy: the dichotomy of control. Picture Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, leading his empire while being surrounded by backstabbers, flatterers, and power-hungry senators. Did he crumble under the weight of their toxicity? No. He wrote to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This principle can be your first weapon against toxic traits. Toxic personalities thrive on making you feel powerless, as if your worth depends on their validation or approval. But here's the Stoic truth: no one can control your emotions unless you hand them the reins. If you anchor yourself in what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, your response, you immediately take away their power. Let's bring this into a modern scenario. Say your coworker constantly criticizes your work, not constructively, but in a way that feels personal and demoralizing. Instead of spiraling into self-doubt or lashing out, ask yourself, what part of this situation is within my control? Is it their behavior? No. But what is within your control is how you choose to interpret their words and how you respond. A Stoic doesn't waste energy on things outside their control because that energy is better spent on mastering themselves. But recognizing toxic traits isn't just about identifying external behavior. It's also about knowing yourself. Which brings us to the second Stoic strategy: know thyself to free thyself. Toxic people often prey on our insecurities. They find the cracks in our armor and exploit them. Seneca, one of Stoicism's greatest thinkers, once said, "He who is brave is free." But what does bravery mean here? It means looking inward and confronting the parts of ourselves we often avoid. Ask yourself, what weaknesses within me are vulnerable to manipulation? Is it my need for approval? My fear of rejection? My discomfort with confrontation? Take, for example, a friend who only reaches out when they need something. First, you oblige, fearing that saying no might make you seem selfish or cold. But over time, resentment builds, and you realize you've been manipulated by your own desire to be liked. The moment you recognize this, you regain power. You can set boundaries not out of anger, but out of respect for yourself. This is what the Stoics meant by living in accordance with nature, knowing yourself so well that external toxicity no longer dictates your choices. But here's the kicker: once you start recognizing these traits in others, you'll inevitably start to notice them within yourself, too. Which leads us to a deeply challenging question: are we always as virtuous as we believe ourselves to be? Reflect on the moments when you may have manipulated someone to get what you want or dismissed their feelings to protect your own ego. This isn't about self-condemnation, It's about self-awareness, because the more you understand the shadows within, the more compassion and strength you'll have when facing them in others. Let's move to the third Stoic strategy, the power of emotional detachment. Toxic individuals feed on reactions. They thrive when they can provoke anger, fear, or sadness because it gives them control over you. But Epictetus, another great Stoic, reminds us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Imagine someone insulting you in public. The instinctive response might be to fire back, to defend your honor, to win the exchange. But ask yourself, what does this reaction achieve? Most of the time, it only feeds the fire. Instead, practice what the Stoics call apatheia, a state of serene indifference to external provocations. This doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect or become a doormat. It means you refuse to let their negativity infiltrate your peace. You respond, not react. Picture a serene lake. When a stone is thrown into it, ripples form, but the lake itself remains calm, steady, and unshaken at its depths. Be that lake. When faced with toxic behavior, take a breath and ask yourself, what is my ultimate goal here? To prove them wrong? To seek revenge? Or to preserve my inner peace? So, here's the challenge. The next time someone tries to provoke you, resist the urge to react impulsively. Instead, pause. Observe their behavior as if you were watching a play. Detach yourself emotionally and remind yourself that their actions are a reflection of them, not you. Now that we've explored the foundation of Stoic strategies for recognizing and handling toxic traits, let's ask one final question before we continue. If you were to strip away the opinions, judgments, and emotions that cloud your mind, how differently would you see the people around you? Compassion as strength, disarming toxicity without losing yourself. In the first part, we uncovered the Stoic strategies of recognizing toxic traits, knowing yourself, and emotionally detaching from provocation. But now we come to a paradox that may feel counterintuitive. What if compassion, the very quality toxic personalities seem to exploit, is actually your greatest strength? It's easy to view compassion as a weakness, especially when dealing with people who manipulate or harm. But let's explore this through a Stoic lens. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil." What does this teach us? First, it's a reminder that toxic people often act out of ignorance, not malice. They are lost in their own struggles, fears, and insecurities. Recognizing this doesn't excuse their behavior, but it does prevent you from dehumanizing them. And this perspective, seeing them as flawed but human, is your key to disarming them. Let's apply this to the fourth Stoic strategy, compassion without attachment. Compassion in the Stoic sense is not about tolerating abuse or sacrificing your well-being. It's about understanding that the toxic person's behavior often has little to do with you and everything to do with their inner turmoil. When you stop taking their actions personally, you free yourself from their grip. Imagine you're dealing with a family member who constantly criticizes you. No matter what you do, it hurts because, deep down, you crave their approval. But what if you paused and considered what pain or insecurity might drive them to behave this way? Perhaps they fear losing control or feel unworthy themselves. By understanding their perspective, not to condone it, but to comprehend it, you regain control over your emotional response. You can engage with them from a place of strength, not defensiveness. But here's the challenge. Compassion must coexist with boundaries, and this is where most of us struggle. Ask yourself, have I mistaken being kind for being compliant? True Stoic compassion is firm yet empathetic. It allows you to say no without guilt, to walk away without anger, and to protect your peace without feeling selfish. As Seneca wisely observed, you act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. This means we often cling to toxic relationships out of fear of conflict, fear of being alone, fear of judgment. But what would a Stoic do? They would release the fear and choose freedom instead. Now let's dive into the fifth Stoic strategy, turning adversity into an advantage. Toxic personalities, as challenging as they are, present an incredible opportunity for growth. The Stoics believed that every obstacle is a chance to cultivate virtue. As Marcus Aurelius famously said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Here's an example. Let's say you're dealing with a boss who constantly undermines your efforts. Instead of viewing this as an insurmountable challenge, ask yourself, what virtue can I practice here? Is it patience, resilience, assertiveness? By reframing the situation as a test of your character, you shift the power dynamic. The toxic person becomes irrelevant. What matters is how you rise to the occasion. This reframing isn't just mental gymnastics, it's transformative. Take Epictetus, who was born a slave and endured unimaginable cruelty. Yet he wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Even in chains, he saw himself as free because he refused to let external circumstances define his inner state. If he could practice this amidst suffering, what's stopping us from doing the same in our daily lives? But let's not stop there. Let's take a deeper look at the role of forgiveness. Forgiveness, in Stoic terms, is not about absolving the other person, it's about liberating yourself. Imagine carrying a heavy rock everywhere you go. The person who wronged you might not even notice, but you're the one weighed down. Forgiveness is the act of setting the rock down and walking away lighter. Ask yourself, who benefits when I cling to anger or resentment? Now, let's make this practical. The next time you encounter toxic behavior, try this exercise. Visualize the person as a child who has been hurt, confused, or neglected. This doesn't mean excusing their actions, it means acknowledging their humanity. Then, ask yourself, what can I control in this moment? How can I respond in a way that aligns with my values? Here's the beauty of Stoicism. It doesn't demand perfection. You will falter, you will react, you will struggle, but every time you pause to reflect, every time you choose virtue over impulse, you grow stronger. Toxic people may remain toxic, but they will no longer have power over you. As we conclude this part, let's ponder one last question. If you were to meet your younger self, the version of you who was most hurt by toxic people, what advice would you give them today? The fortress within, building an unshakable core against toxicity. In the previous parts, we explored how Stoicism helps us recognize toxic traits, respond with emotional detachment, and transform adversity into virtue. Now, we arrive at the final and most profound Stoic strategy, mastering yourself so deeply that no external force, not manipulation, not cruelty, not even betrayal, can penetrate your inner peace. Imagine becoming like a fortress, impenetrable, self-sustaining, and unshakable. But let's begin with a question. What does true freedom mean to you? Is it freedom from external chaos? Or is it freedom from being controlled by that chaos? For the Stoics, true freedom comes from within. It's the ability to remain calm in the face of storms, to act according to your principles rather than react to provocations, and to find fulfillment in your own character rather than in the approval or validation of others. This inner fortress is not built overnight, it requires discipline, self-awareness, and constant practice. Let's explore how you can cultivate it. The first pillar of your fortress is clarity of values. Toxic personalities often thrive on ambiguity. They blur lines, twist truths, and leave you doubting yourself. But a Stoic anchors themselves in clear, unshakable principles. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Simple, yet powerful. When you know your values, integrity, kindness, resilience, you create a compass that guides your actions, regardless of external influences. Let's apply this to a real-world scenario. Imagine someone spreads rumors about you at work, trying to undermine your reputation. The instinctive reaction might be to confront them angrily or defend yourself to everyone. But a Stoic asks, does this align with my values? What is the most virtuous action I can take? Perhaps it's remaining composed and letting your consistent actions speak louder than their words. Perhaps it's addressing the issue directly but calmly. The key is acting in alignment with your principles, not their provocation. The second pillar is the practice of stillness. Toxic people thrive on chaos. They stir emotions, create drama, and keep you off balance. But a Stoic cultivates stillness, the ability to pause, reflect, and respond with intention. Seneca advised, if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Stillness is your way of finding your port, your purpose, amidst the storm. Here's an exercise to practice stillness. The next time you feel provoked by someone's behavior, resist the urge to react immediately. Instead, take 3 deep breaths. With each breath, remind yourself, this moment is temporary. Their actions do not define me. My response is my choice. In that space between stimulus and response, you reclaim your power. The third pillar is emotional self-mastery. Toxic personalities often try to control you by triggering your emotions. Anger, fear, guilt. But as Epictetus taught, no man is free who is not master of himself. Emotional mastery doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It means understanding them. Why did that comment make you angry? Why does this person's opinion affect you so deeply? When you understand your emotional triggers, you can defuse them before they control you. Think of emotions as wild horses. If left unchecked, they can lead you off a cliff. But with practice and discipline, you can guide them, harness their power, and channel them toward your goals. Start by journaling your emotional responses to difficult interactions. Write down what happened, how you felt, and what you learned about yourself. Over time, patterns will emerge, and you'll gain greater control over your reactions. The fourth pillar is self-sufficiency. Toxic people often exploit your need for something, whether it's approval, love, or even material support. But a Stoic seeks fulfillment within themselves. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. Ask yourself, what do I truly need to feel whole? Is it the validation of others? Or is it a sense of purpose? Is it material wealth? Or is it the peace that comes from contentment? The less you depend on external sources for your happiness, the less power others have over you. This doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means building a life where your worth isn't dictated by anyone else. Finally, the fifth pillar is resilience through perspective. Toxicity can feel overwhelming, but perspective allows you to see it for what it truly is, a fleeting challenge in the grand scheme of your life. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the vastness of the universe and the brevity of human existence. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This isn't a morbid thought, it's liberating. It reminds us that most conflicts, no matter how painful, are temporary. They lose their power when viewed through the lens of impermanence. The next time someone's toxicity feels unbearable, zoom out. Imagine yourself a year from now, 5 years from now. Will this moment still hold the same weight? Or will it be a distant memory, a lesson that shaped your growth? As we conclude, let's reflect on the journey we've taken together. We've explored the Stoic strategies of recognizing toxic traits, mastering your emotions, setting boundaries, and building an inner fortress. But the ultimate question remains, what kind of person do you want to become? Toxic people may never change, but Stoicism isn't about changing them. It's about transforming yourself. It's about becoming so grounded, so clear in your values, and so self-sufficient that no external force can shake you. This is the essence of freedom. This is the power of Stoicism. Now, let me leave you with one final challenge. The next time you encounter someone who tests your patience, who provokes you or drains you, pause and ask yourself, what virtue can I practice in this moment? Because every interaction, no matter how difficult, is an opportunity to grow into the person you aspire to be. And remember, the strongest fortress is the one built within.